uh, you're good to go.
Fantastic. So to me, is it? Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming along to hear me speak this afternoon. I am going to share a presentation with you, and I am going to speak about my own personal experience regarding mobility, activity, and exercise throughout my paralysed journey, I suppose is one way of putting it. I will be sharing the presentation, so it does mean that I won't be able to see anybody's faces, I believe, unless it comes up at the top. So if there are any questions, please don't wait to the end. You can interrupt me at any time. Just flag them in the chat. Rob, if I miss them, can you just interject with them and just tell me any questions? Alternatively, you can just wait to the end. But I'm a pretty open book, and I'm very used to talking about all aspects, both intimate and sensitive, as well as the norm of living with spinal cord injury. So if anybody wants to ask me any questions, please feel free. So what we'll do is I'll start to share my screen. If I can remember how to do this. It's been a long couple of weeks off. Rob, can you allow me to share my screen, please? I'm currently.
Oh yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just before I do, Bruce, I see you're in hospital, or you have a hospital bed at home, one or the other. I just want to, if you're a newly injured person, I just want to say I will be talking about some of the quite sensitive side of my early injury as well. And if at any point it does sort of touch any sensitive nerves with anybody, please do say, because it's I will be talking about my early days of my injury, and it's not all happiness and light and smiles and confidence. It's a difficult time that we all go through. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there, and if it is too much for anybody, please do just speak up, and we're here to help support and to talk about that as well. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hang on. All right, there we go. Got the first. Okay, so can everybody see my screen there? Got some nodding faces. Yes, great.
Gary,
so
Gary, I'm going to have my dinner while you're doing it, so don't worry about that.
That's absolutely fine. If you don't mind muting, I have a condition where it drives me insane when I hear people chewing. I don't mind seeing it, but hearing it just triggers something in my brain that makes me want to explode. But yeah, absolutely no problem. You tuck in. Okay, so today I've been asked to come along and talk about mobility, activity, and exercise. My name is Gary Dawson. I work for the Spinal Injuries Association. I'm the support network manager in the North. I will give you a brief rundown of my life, my injury, and a brief touch at some of my experiences post-injury. But today I'm largely going to be talking about the three subjects that you see on the screen there. Those with really good eyesight will see that I put a little disclaimer in the bottom of my my front screen there. I am sharing my own personal experience here. If you feel inspired or motivated or encouraged to go on and engage in any of the subjects that we talk about today, please do speak to a professional before doing anything that may put your own health at risk. As I say, I will be talking about various different supplements and activities, and and I can only ever speak from my own personal experience regarding this. So when I put this presentation together, I had to ask, the ultimate question: who am I? And this isn't because of, I need to delve into the depths of my soul to figure out what I want. But when we have a spinal cord injury, it's one of the first focuses that we have. We focus on who we were, what the person was before the spinal cord injury. I was a 19-year-old electrician riding sports bikes. going out every weekend, going clubbing, you know, going to the gym. I loved my life, and it was. I lived. I didn't live to work. I worked to live. Absolutely. And as an apprentice on, you know, minimum below minimum wage, it was on £5 an hour by the time I was 3 years into my apprenticeship. But I spent all my money on the finer things in life that I could afford at the time, which was me and my mates going out getting drunk, having a dance, you know, going to the gym, paying my gym membership, riding my sports bike. My entire wage literally went onto the insurance for that bike. You know, as a 19-year-old with a sports bike, it was incredibly expensive. And then all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, my entire existence changed. And not only was I now facing a world of paralysis and terminology I'd never heard of, things like neurological dysfunction, things like paraplegia and T6 and T6 complete, and disability and wheelchairs and rehabilitation. You know, I had to come to terms with all these different things, but I was determined to still be the person I was before. But there was one thing that was stopping me, and that was that, as you can see on the top right-hand corner, a full dislocation, fractured bone in my back with a complete severed spinal cord. So I had to think, well, who was I? And who do I want to be? And can I still be that person? And for the early days of my injury, I was so determined because I was 19, I was stubborn, I was all these different words that I associated myself with being, which was going to help me overcome this situation. You know, meant that, well, I'm not going to be paralyzed because I am going to walk again. I will get that back life back and I will become the person who I was. But as time went by and as the reality of the situation kicked in, and as the days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months and months turned into a whole new set of circumstances that I had to come to terms with, because I suddenly realized that it wasn't changing for me and I wasn't going to be the person that I was. I had to become somebody new. And that wasn't an easy thing to come to terms with. I didn't want to be this new person. I didn't want to be in a world where I couldn't ride my sports bike and I couldn't go to the job that I loved. And I started with a lot of self-doubt and a lot of beating myself up mentally and unfortunately physically as well. And as I went through my journey, despite having a brave face and despite protruding all this confidence and this exuberance as to what I wanted to be and what I will be, the internal monologue that dragged me down on a daily basis was relatively negative. And it took me a long time to figure out what it was I wanted to be. And it was through life experience that actually started shaping what my future was. You know, going from a very clinical environment in the acute hospitals of, you know, intensive care, into rehab wards, into side rooms, and then onto a specialist rehabilitation unit. I went to Southport Spinal Unit. When my world started opening up and the focus became no longer, you know, we just need to keep you medically safe so that you'll stay alive, to we're going to the pub, or we're going to the gym, or right, we're going out because you're going to get on a bus because you need to go into Southport to do your shopping. But you need to learn all the skills to be able to do that as well. And it was the first time in my life that I started to see a future, a light at the end of the tunnel. It was possibility, it was opportunity. And despite me still having this internal monologue, which was difficult to manage, I was starting to balance it out with some positivity and some optimism. And as I sort of developed through my rehabilitation and was discharged home and adjusted to being at home, and again, this comes with a lot of very difficult times, adjusting to be out in the community, being back out into society, having to face the world again without the support bubble of the NHS and your peers, being surrounded by well-wishers who've got no idea what you're actually going through. It's a slow progress. And every day, hopefully you go that little bit further, and a little bit further down the street or to the next set of shops, or you know, you spend a little bit more time independently out instead of having your family support you and look after you, etc. And when I looked at once I'd mastered my bowels, my bladder, and I was looking after my skin and things like I was able to transfer independently and dress, and I then started to look at these three aspects, these mobility and activity and exercise, because as much as living with a spinal cord injury can be difficult, with the right help, right support, right information and guidance, once you are able to master certain elements of quite basic parts of rehabilitation. I say basic in a very loose form because it's very difficult to do when you're newly injured. But once you start mastering these, it just gives you a foundation to then go on and build a life where you're able to, feel comfortable in your own skin and be able to really engage in living life again, and not wake up every day and go, oh crap, I'm disabled, but wake up every day and go, right, where am I going? What am I doing? I've got this to do. I need to get out of bed early, etc., etc. So when we look at the mobility side of things, and I'm not talking necessarily about, and again, so I should say, I am talking specifically about my own injury. I am paralyzed from the chest down. I have no feeling, no sensation, no control of bodily functions. My upper limbs are not affected by my spinal cord injury, although I have now been injured for almost 19 years, and I do now struggle with joint pains and various other issues, carpal tunnel, arthritis, etc. But I am going to come to that as well. And some of the things that were taught to me, sort of in those very early days in rehabilitation back in 2003, were things like just stretching my legs. I have stretched my legs every single day, every single morning, every single night when I get up and when I go to bed, and that increases my legs flexibility. By increasing my legs flexibility, it means that simple tasks like putting my shoes on, transferring in and out of my car, getting on and off the floor becomes much more manageable. Now, don't get me wrong, these are still difficult tasks. And if you're struggling with chronic spasms, or if you don't have the upper limb functions to be able to do that, to be able to grab your leg and pull them in and stretch them, being able to have assistance from your personal assistants, your carers, family members, spouses, partners, etc. As long as, again, you're not doing any damage to yourself, it's just a gentle stretch, it's going to increase your flexibility. And you're being mindful around this, when we put mindfulness there, as I've said so far many times, the internal monologue of negativity that we tend to face. We all know how great it is to have the best day when we're engaged in rehab, or we're having a really good day for your bowels to go, or you to lean too far forwards and you to bypass with your bladder, or to fall out of your chair, or to have somebody make a comment because they're having a joke with their friends, but you overhear it, can absolutely destroy you. And it can put you into a very negative downward spiral of hate and depression. So things like using mindfulness and being aware of your surroundings and accepting certain aspects of your situation that are out of your control. If I have a bowel accident, it's not my fault. It's because something else has gone beyond, I've got no control of my bowels, and luckily for me, it happens quite infrequently because of how I manage myself. But when it does happen, it's not my fault. I can't blame myself, and I need to be able to just adapt to the situation, which again takes a lot of mental strength to be able to do this. And don't get me wrong, when it does happen, I still kick myself and I still hate myself because it just it's that moment of, God, why me? But to use things like the Headspace app, or even just YouTube, to listen to videos about deep breathing, or to create almost like a Zen environment in your own mind to help you process information, is so beneficial. Having the right suitable and adapted equipment is something else that I really struggled with in my early days. I was given an inappropriate wheelchair. My wheelchair services would not give me a lightweight active user chair, which you can get on the NHS now. Going back nearly 20 years, the equipment was terrible. For me to do sports, it's cost a £5,000 basketball chair. For me to hand cycle, I'm looking at a £5,000 hand bike. Even for me to go to the gym, I'm looking at a gym membership, and I can still only access small amounts of their equipment. And having access to the right grants and information again, and having someone like from a support coordinator from the SIA to write supporting letters to enable you to get this equipment or to advocate on your behalf to get a better wheelchair from Wheelchair Services, again, is so important. Then mobility and transport, I do put this in there because if you are able to drive or able to access the mobility scheme or some form of transport, whether it's getting on a bus or getting in a taxi or getting on a tram or a train, it opens up your world massively. It is a difficult thing at first, especially if you're using public transport, because it's quite intimidating. You're dealing with members of the public who are stressed and don't want to be using public transport often, and it does take a fair bit of trial and error to learn what is available in your area or what is the right mode of transport for you. But if I was able to drive, and I didn't have a driving license before my accident, I rode a motorbike. So post injury, I had to get my driving license. I got free driving lessons through Motability, which you can still get. You do have to pay for your theory and your practical test yourself. And then I was able to access the Motability scheme, which meant I could get an adapted car, which meant my world just instantly opened up. And that sent me down to the world of activity. Because this, again, I had to look back at who I was and who I wanted to be. I worked as an electrician, couldn't do that again. I'm paralyzed from the chest down. My hobbies were going to the gym and riding motorbikes. Well, I can't do that again because at the time I didn't believe they did adapted motorbikes, and I didn't think the gym was going to be suitable for me. And my interests were just didn't seem to align with being paralyzed. Going to nightclubs or going out with my friends and family to restaurants and pubs, and or even just going out shopping on a Saturday morning. These things just didn't seem to be available or achievable in those early days. And because I was injured before the world of YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, and especially things like Zoom and Teams, my knowledge only came from what was available through a Forward magazine, sort of bi-monthly magazine from SIA. I didn't have access to other people's experience, and so I had to sort of figure it all out myself. And returning to work was not something I wanted to do. Instead, I got into, as I said, once I got my driving license, it meant I could access my local disability sports club, which was a wheelchair basketball club. And for the first time in 2 years of my injury, I was getting fit, getting active, and most importantly for me, I was getting rid of a lot of aggression and frustration by getting into a basketball chair and just smashing into other people, thinking that was the rules. Apparently it's not. It's a non-contact sport. But at the time, I just wanted to bang into everyone and just burn off some energy. And what activity led for me was opportunity, because I went from being relatively active before, inactive through my early days of my injury, but then to getting back into, say, a sports chair, it meant that I could start playing for my club, which developed me onto playing for an even better club, which then offered me opportunities to try out for Great Britain. I was part of the GB program for several years. Never got into the squad, unfortunately, but the team I played for has traveled all over Europe, and I've been able to play, against some of the best teams and best players in the world as an amateur player. And sport isn't for everybody. And when we look at activity, I've obviously got gym down there, and I'm talking about wheelchair basketball. But when you become paralyzed and society turns around to you, you're going to be a Paralympian, or we'll see you in Paris, the next Olympics, all this sort of stuff. It's like, well, it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to be a Paralympian. Not everyone wants to do sports. So some people want to go off and live their own lives away from sports and not fall into these stereotypes of what a disabled person is. And you have to find your own hobbies and interests, whether that's through art, whether that's returning to college, doing a course, whether it's getting into photography, whether it's just getting in your chair and going for a push around the block, or getting a dog and going out walking them. whether it's taking the grandkids to and from school or taking them out on holiday or whatever it is. It's important that we explore and we find what is going to keep our minds active, what's going to engage us into sort of this reintegration into being an equal member of society again. For me, it was through sports, and one of the main things that I got out of sport was not only was the fitness, the activity, and all the benefits that go with that, but having access to my fellow members of the disabled community was just amazing. I went from being in a spinal unit surrounded by my peers, where the disabled people outnumbered the able-bodied people in there, to all of a sudden being discharged home into an environment where I'm now the only disabled person in my world, surrounded by very amazingly supportive family and friends who just wish me the well wishes constantly, and just did everything they could to make my life as easy as possible. But they didn't understand the complexities of living with spinal cord injury, didn't understand bowel management or bladder management, didn't understand sexual dysfunction. So to be back in an environment where I'm with my peers, and they didn't all have spinal cord injuries. There were spina bifida and cerebral palsy, and there were people with amputations, there were able-bodied players, but they all had some understanding of the world of disability. And again, this is what it led, that's why activity led to opportunity for me, because it increased my knowledge and my confidence and my ability to feel comfortable in my situation again, to stop blaming myself and asking all the questions like why me and what if. The questions that I was never getting answers to shifted to, well, if they can, I can. And me then going out to the car park going, hang on, you've got a fancy BMW, how do your hand controls work? Hang on, what, you've also got a Lamborghini. Granted, I didn't have a compensation claim and will never get a Lamborghini or a BMW. But it was interesting to see how the people lived in this world, and they weren't all angry and they weren't all frustrated. They were having a laugh and they were having banter and they were enjoying their lives, and they were living with these complications of bowel management and bladder management and risk of pressure sores and risk of autonomic dysreflexia. And it was so eye-opening that my life just turned from severe depression to this up and up and up and up, and I have never looked back. And it was through the support of my peers and my fellow disabled people who and their relatives, who put me on that path. Because at the time there was no SIA, was not as it is now. Sorry, there was no support, there was no in-person, no peer element where someone was coming out and telling me how they lived their lives. It was very much you're on your own, deal with it. So it was such an amazing time for me. To be able to sort of re-engage with life in that way. And the exercise side of it. Two things that were said to me on discharge when I left the spinal unit. The first thing was, don't put on weight. And the second thing was, look after your skin. They were the two most important things. Obviously, the heavier you are, the harder it is to do things like transfers, the harder it is to do bowel management, to pressure relief. So it's all about a good life balance of making sure that you're able and physically capable of looking after your skin. If you're not able to do it yourself, obviously it's about you being empowered and having the knowledge to instruct somebody else to make sure that you're looking after your skin. But the exercise side of it for me was where I really engaged. Exercise is addictive when you really get into it. And I've put the Parasport website on there, and it's not the best name when I'm saying that, not everyone needs to go off and be a Paralympian. It's just about, it's basically, it's all disability sports clubs in the country, where you can go onto that website, put in your postcode, select a radius, and it will come up with all the different disability sports clubs in your region, from wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, or your powered chaired sports like football, seated volleyball, dancing, your IFI gyms, which is your inclusive fitness initiative gyms. It's brilliant. Please do check it out. And I encourage people to come down to my the basketball club I play for. I play for the Owls, based in Manchester, and when I was working as a support officer, I would encourage every single person I met to come down. Didn't matter of their level of injury, didn't matter of their level of impairment. It didn't matter if they wanted to be get into sports or not. Some people turned up like, I don't want to play sports. There's nothing for me. But what they got out of the banter and the just being part of a group of people, either sat on the sidelines having a laugh, or before or after the training sessions, because we often go to the pub as well. It's being part of a community. It's having access to your peer support from people who are living living that life that you can tap into. It's just so amazing. But beyond that, if you're not, hang on, I'm going too far. If you don't want to get into, like I say, your sports, just getting out to your local shopping centre, going to your local park and having a push round, having a chat to the people who are there running or walking their dogs. If anyone follows me on Instagram, I will put my Instagram in the chat. You'll see that we're out walking our dog. We've got a little cockapoo. We take him out. We have to take him out every single day. I stick a freewheel on the front of my chair, and we don't just go to the local park. We go off road and go all sorts of different places. We like to push boundaries where possible, but most of the time it is just a case of going to the local park to give them a run in the morning. I sit and chat to all the other dog walkers. It's just about getting out, and shopping centres are brilliant for that. They're relatively flat. They've always got somewhere to park. They usually have a cafe, and you can just engage in that slow easing yourself back into society, and there's no rush, there's no pressure, and if it's not for you, this isn't for you. It's not for everybody. We fully appreciate that, but for me, this is what I found helped. And when we're looking at mobility, activity, and exercise, what is the goal to be? The three things that I first came to mind was better mental health. I talked about my early days of my spinal injury, and as much as I was positive, I had a big smile on my face, I was confident. Inside, I was just destroyed, and I really struggled. And I'm not afraid to say that I had suicidal thoughts, and I did go down a very dark path, and my coping mechanisms were very negative, of drink and drugs and literally beating myself up, because I didn't know any better. I didn't have the support that is available to today. So by that, utilizing your mobility and accessing the activities and exercising will boost mental health. It's proven. It's going to increase better inclusion. One thing that still frustrates me after almost 2 decades of being a wheelchair user is when I'm out and about and I have people generally of an older generation say to me, "Oh, it's lovely to see you out and about." I get frustrated with that. I love the fact that they're saying that. That's great for them, but what frustrates me is that me being out and about is not the norm. Why is it that one wheelchair user out walking his dog is seen as a bit of a spectacle, a bit of we should all stand by and clap? It's like, no, it should be. Why should that be a moment of triumph? No, it should just be normal for you to see a wheelchair user out and about living their lives as everybody else would do. There is no difference to the person I was to the person I am today, other than the fact I can't stand up now and I do everything sat down. Which just means everywhere I go, I've got somewhere to sit, and I get a free car, Motability, and I can park wherever I want. There's a few perks to this, but ultimately, it will increase. It has increased my self-esteem. Spinal cord injury is not something we plan on. It's not something that anybody ever thinks will happen to them, and when it does happen, it happens in the blink of an eye. And we relate to having a spinal cord injury to being a toddler again, learning your mobility, learning to control your bodily functions. Learning how to be the person, be a husband, be a son, be a brother, be an employee, be a partner, a spouse, whatever it is, and obviously all the female versions of that as well. Learn how to be that person again really knocks your confidence, because we don't see ourselves as equal members of society again. We just see ourselves as you know, this disabled person sat in a chair who's now going to have to be looked after. But the reality is, with, you know, if you can be empowered, you can be motivated, you know, despite your level of impairment, you can go off and live the life you want to live, albeit with, you know, making adjustments and accepting that there are certain boundaries that we just cannot cross. So it's not about what we can't do, it's about what we can do. And if we can't do that still, what's the alternative? I went skiing a couple of years ago with SIA. Had the most amazing time. And one of the lads who came with us was a C3-4 complete, 18 months post-injured, broke his neck in a downhill mountain bike race. And he had the most amazing attitude to life. You know, he was an adrenaline junkie before and he was an adrenaline junkie afterwards. And he was like, right, which black run are you taking me down first? And he was strapped into a chair that he had no control over with an able-bodied ski behind him. And he's going, right, let's take down all the black runs. It's like going faster and faster. And he clocked about 50 odd mile an hour on Strava. And he was amazing. They used a chin-operated powered chair. He stayed up drinking with us all every night. He chatted to more of the Italian women than any of us because he also spoke a little bit of Italian. And he was amazing. And he had 2 full-time PAs with him who did absolutely everything for him. But the way he looked at it was, you know what, yes, I'm physically dependent on them for everything, but I am verbally independent. I dictate every aspect of my life. When I have my meds, what I wear, when I get up, when I go to the toilet, where we go. It's just that I'm using them as an extra mobility aid to enable me to live the life I live. And you know what? Not many people will get to that level of independence as quick as he did, but he is an amazing example of what can be achieved with the right support and the right information and the right guidance and the willingness to put yourself into a position that at first will feel uncomfortable, but ultimately will help you grow as you know, as a spinal injured person, to develop your skills and your knowledge. And coming back to like what is the goal, it's got to be, for me especially, and as SIA is our ethos, it's a fulfilled life. Having a spinal cord injury is one of the worst and best things that's ever happened to me. And some people are a bit shocked when I say that, because they're, oh yeah, but you can't walk and you've got no control of this and that. So yes, I know that. But if you look at those pictures on your screen now, you know, whether it's, you know, going on holiday to Cornwall with my girlfriend, whether it's out walking the dog in a field, going to a black tie ball with my best mate, you know, playing wheelchair basketball, having meetings with colleagues, hand cycling through Slovenia with my family, or, you know, sitting in the flight path in Wales, watching the planes go by and then messing around with your family, pretending you're all planes. It's being able to live a happy and content life. You'll see in those pictures, other than the basketball one, because I'm obviously taking it seriously, I'm smiling. I love my life. And it's taken me a very long time to get to where I am. And hopefully I've got a lot more experiences ahead of me and a lot more time to continue exploring the world and to continue seeing what is available to me, and hopefully continue motivating and inspiring others to get involved with sports and activities and recreation, whether it's simple things as, or it's something as, you know, returning to work, or as simple as, you know, going to your local shops. And even I say my local shop, I can't get in, but I go and knock on the door, and Dave, the shop owner, comes out and is like, yeah, what can I get you, Gary? You know, because I've built up that relationship with him, even though there's an Asda around the corner as well, which I can quite easily go into. Just get him to do it for me now. You know, it is about having that fulfilled life, and hopefully this is sort of giving you an insight into what I've managed to achieve throughout my time. And I say, one thing I always say to people as well is, like, I'm 20 years down the line, and all the pictures that you see may look impressive or may look like, you know, I've got the world in my fingertips type of thing. It's taken me a very, very long time to get here. And, you know, there is a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of failing. Failure is a stepping stone to success. And we don't look at try not to look at failure as something that's gone wrong, more as what can I learn from this and how can I do things different or better or different to enable me to achieve my goals. It's all very it should be written on a pebble by the side of the ocean kind of metaphors, but it's true. It is all true, and I've been able to utilize this to go on and live a very good life. I did say that I would talk about supplements as well, which I just realized I forgot to mention. When I was part of the GV program, I was training up to 50 hours a week. And one thing that they didn't give us was they just beasted us all the time. They didn't give us any knowledge about preserving your joints and your shoulders. So unfortunately, I did develop really bad impingement and rotator cuff injuries. I've got golfer's and tennis elbow in my elbows, and I've now got carpal tunnel. I don't think I could have done much about the carpal tunnel, but things like certain supplements I take on a daily basis now, like joint care, glucosamine, vitamin C, multivitamins. I take a mixture, a concoction of micro, like greens and reds, as well as a few other bits and bobs, some green tea supplements, etc. And for me, it makes a massive difference. I know when I'm not taking them. I do struggle with shoulder pain. I still play wheelchair basketball. I'm currently training just twice a week at the minute, and I play for a team called the Owls, and I do hand cycle as well. I'm actually I just did the Coast to Coast for SIA, and if there's any keen and budding hand cyclists amongst the people today, I will be doing the Tuscan Loop in June for the SIA, which is Pisa to Florence, Florence to Siena, Siena back to Pisa. So it's approximately 200 miles in 3 days. And the bike I use is completely arm powered. There's no motors, there's no battery backup. It's horrible. It's such hard work. But it's also great fun as well. And those cycles are just the most amazing trips. Sometimes it doesn't feel like you're on an arduous 200-mile cycle because you're having such a laugh with the people you're there with. But yes, so that's my presentation today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and stop share. It's that one. Wow, there's a lot more people on the call than there was at the start. So I just want to sort of hand it over to you. So if you guys have got any questions or if there's anything you want to ask us or discuss, now's your chance. Pure stunned silence. Oh, is there anything? Put it in the chat if you don't.
Can I ask
Martin,
a question?
Oh, sorry. I don't know who said that. Who was that?
It's Paula here.
Paula. Hi, Paula.
Hi, honey. I have cauda equina syndrome, and I feel as if I've very much been dropped between the cracks because everything I have, I've had to either battle for or fight for myself. I'm 12 years into the cauda equina, and I've only just got my first wheelchair, which I had to buy myself a year ago.
Wow.
And I didn't know if you could point me in the direction of anybody who I could speak to at SIA or anything like that to help me find out what's out there, because
Absolutely,
it's a bit like hunting in the dark.
Well, firstly, it disgusts me how much people with what used to be classed as non-traumatic spinal cord injuries were often dismissed and didn't access the full breadth of support that's available for people with spinal cord injuries. You still have neurological deficit from impact to your spinal cord. You have spinal cord injury. So you should have been treated exactly the same as if you'd fallen off a motorbike or fallen down a cliff. So that is, I feel your frustrations there. Secondly, yes, there's certainly things that services that are available in SA that will be able to help you. Depending on where you live in the country, we'll be able to pair you up with your local support coordinator. You're in Cornwall, brilliant. So Gareth Jones, who's our support coordinator down in the southwest, he'll be able to have a chat with you and offer you some support. Now, what we are able to do for those who, and I've done this myself, for those who are not being given the appropriate piece of equipment, from their wheelchair services, we are able to advocate on your behalf by phoning up your wheelchair services and arguing the case why it's important that someone with, reduced mobility, someone who's going to be suffering with chronic fatigue, why it's important that they have access to not only a wheelchair but an appropriate wheelchair.
Yeah.
If you're going to be putting that wheelchair into a car because you need to go out to do your shopping, or you need to take the kids to school, or you need to be going to a sports club, or you just need to be going to the park, you need to be able to get out and about, you need to be able to have a wheelchair that can be easily broken down and put into the boot of a car. Or
it would curl your hair if you could see my wheelchair, because I got it through the local Lions Association, the fundraising Lions.
Yeah.
And it's just a bog standard wheelchair that you see in shopping centres. So I haven't got any hoists, I haven't got any lifts, I've had no training. When I was trying to get a wheelchair, I was told that I, quote, fell between the cracks because my house was too small for an electric wheelchair, but they didn't think a manual wheelchair was appropriate for me. So what do you do?
It's difficult because obviously as wheelchair services it's a postcode lottery. Wheelchair services, each one writes their own criteria.
Yeah.
I live 10 minutes from one of our support coordinators, and we fall under two different catchment areas. He gets a £1,500 allowance towards buying his own chair if he wants to go down the voucher scheme.
Yeah.
I get £450.
Wow.
The wheelchair that I'm currently sat in, one wheel alone, fully built up, is £1,000 just for that one wheel.
Wow.
And it's, they will not provide me that level of support. I got mine through Access to Work, which is a brilliant government scheme. So if you do work, you are able to access almost an unlimited level of funding for to access the equipment that you need to be able to do your job. And there are brilliant schemes like the Mobility Grant Scheme where you can apply for funding for it. But I would suggest, Paula, that if someone could just put Gareth's link to his webpage, either Andy or Rob, if you don't mind, Andy, just pop that into the chat for Paula. And if you just drop him an email, he'll be able to have a chat with you. And again, wheelchair services, again, it's an absolute nightmare. There's some of them that I'm dealing with one at the minute, and it's up to a 3 to 4 year wait if you want a power chair. I was like, well, what do you do for 3 to 4 years? You sit in bed. And that's their expectation. It is disgusting, but what you will be happy to know is that SIA are doing some work with wheelchair services to standardise the criteria. But this is unfortunately not going to happen anytime soon. It's just something that's at the start of the process. Martin, you were waving your hand around.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary, for your insight into your life. Very interesting. I found it quite inspirational, really, to be honest. Little bit, and I relate to some of the things you say, but a little bit about myself. I've actually been a paraplegic T7 complete for 42 years now.
Wow.
During that time, I've done wheelchair sports. I followed more or less a similar path to yourself. But in those days, 40 odd years ago, it was monkey poles in the hospital, dragging big Everest and Jennings wheelchairs in and out of cars. It was horrendous, to be honest. But we all did it. We got on with it. And like you said, the camaraderie was brilliant amongst all the guys I used to do sport with and everything. It was really good. The only thing I would say is, looking back on my life now, like yourself, I've had problems with my shoulders, rotator cuff, both of them done. I've had repairs to my tendons. Ever lightly, I've done coast-to-coast and cycle rides like yourself, and crazy things like rain 22 miles down the Thames, all sorts of crazy things, really. But that was one of my coping mechanisms as such. I loved it. It made me life. I've done so much in the wheelchair, it's unbelievable. But if I could look back now, and I say this to new paraplegics that I see, that I know, I say to them, everything in moderation. I used to think in them early days, I'm not having an electric chair. I'm not having any power assist. I want to do it myself. I'm going to do that coast to coast. I'm going to do it myself. With hindsight now, although I had a hand cycle, a Force 3 up until a year or so ago, I've now bought one of these hybrid quickie, what's it called? Attitude. Quickie Attitude. And I have to say, where I live, it's hilly in the Derbyshire Dales area. Staffordshire Moorlands, and the hills. Without it, I wouldn't be able to get out. Now, me and my wife go out on that bike and we ride together. It's absolutely brilliant. I'd recommend anything to anybody. And so I think the main thing is it's conserve for myself. Now I try and conserve my shoulders, and I'm quite happy with what we do. I'm still active. I still get out, still get on my hand bike. I'm still doing a bit of kayaking and stuff like that. So, I do enjoy life to the full, but my advice to all new people is just things in moderation and think about the long term, because probably when I first started, they probably didn't think I'd make 40 odd years. But I mean,
interestingly,
we're living a lot longer, so you have to be very careful about how you do it. Now, I'm always against people who think, "Oh, I'm not having electric." I think I learned my lesson. Really, I was definitely against it. But yeah, it has been a great insight listening to you talk. Really, I've found it inspirational. So good, and I like the ideas about some of the vitamins and stuff. Like glycogen. Well, I used to give that to the dog, and we gave it because she had arthritis. Perhaps I ought to start taking that myself now.
Yeah, glucosamine is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I do speak to your GP first. But you're absolutely right there, Martin. I remember, as I say, as a stubborn kid, the amount of times I've been getting in my car, and the public are brilliant. Generally, you get in your car, someone will come up to you and it's like, do you need a hand? I'm like, no, I'm fine, I can do it. The amount of times in the last couple of years, like, yeah, please, just get my chair up for me. My shoulders are hurting, and it's just going to strain it. There is no shame in asking for help. There is no shame in. I did the Coast to Coast recently, and it's the first one. I've done 7 of the cycle challenges for SIA, and it's the first one where I had to get in the van because I was struggling so much with a repetitive stress injury in my left arm, and I could have fought on, and it had just broken me for the next 6 months, or I could have got in the van, done the next stage, and was able to complete the ride in my bike, as opposed to potentially not completing the ride at all. And I thought seriously and hard about getting some form of hybrid for the Tuscan Loop, because I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm not as strong or as fit as I used to be. And I want to preserve my shoulders and my joints. And I want to continue living as independently as I possibly can do for as long as I'm able to. So it's a fantastic and sound piece of advice there, Martin. Yeah, great point to make.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem. Anybody else?
Gary, I'd like to ask you, how did you get into your hand cycling? It's something I've never asked you before.
All right. So I started working for the SIA back in 2012, and I was in a meeting, and I was sat at the back of our main meeting room, the Paul Smith room at SIA House. And a lady called Liz Wright, who was our fundraising manager at the time, came into the room and went, "We're going to cycle from London to Paris. Who wants to do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, me." Right. And then there's like all of a sudden like, "Well, what does that mean? I've got to go and get a bike." So that's actually what actually got me into hand cycling, was the volunteering to do an event first. And it was like, hang on, I've said I'll do it now. That means I've now got to get the equipment. So what I ended up doing was I applied for grants to buy a clip-on hand bike. So I got a Da Vinci motorized, sort of like hybrid type motorized thing. So there's a motor in the front wheel, big battery pack on it. You can adjust how much input is given into the wheel, when you get to a hill. And I applied for funding. And one of the reasons, and something you just said, Martin, one of the reasons I was about to tell this story, so thank you for asking, Andy, is one of the reasons I put down for my grant application was the fact that as a now disabled person, I can't do any sports with my family. I can't, my wheelchair can't keep up with their push bikes. We can go for a walk, but we can't play wheelchair basketball together because I can't afford more chairs, and the club didn't have any spare chairs, etc. I can't just go around to the courts with them because it just doesn't work. So yeah, I actually applied for the funding based on the fact that I was able to then engage with activities with my family, which put me back into a better position for socializing with my family. And I managed to get £2,500 towards a clip-on hand cycle, which funded it for me, which was brilliant. But yeah, and then from then on, it was just I loved it, and it's hand cycling. It's a brilliant activity, and there were so many different bikes and attachments and adaptations, you know, anything from a rev and go where you're doing nothing. If you haven't got hand function, they've got adaptations for that, all the way through to like the hand cycle that I've shown you, which is my recumbent, which is full arm power, which is brilliant downhill. I've not cracked 50 mile an hour yet. I did get to 47.5. But uphill, it's more like 4 to 5 mile an hour because it is just a tank to drag up a hill. But yeah, that's how I got into it. And as far as general exercise, the other thing I did off the back of that, because when I was training for the big cycles that I was doing, I got myself a Magna trainer. The first one I got was just a cheap one off Amazon, £25 or something, and I put it on my desk. I actually put it on my kitchen table. I stuck a film on my tablet, and I would cycle just at my desk 30 to 60 minutes a day, and it was amazing how fit it got me, how strong it got me. And that I felt all of a sudden, you know, my transfers were getting better. I wasn't dragging myself as much. Getting into my car was easier. And you know, I've always struggled with body dysmorphia post-injury. I'm paralyzed from the chest down. It looks like I've got a bit of a gut. I don't. It's just where my organs sit. I have no core muscles holding my organs in place anymore. And because I didn't have a fixation operation, my spine's now starting to collapse. I've got quite bad scoliosis in the bottom of my back. It looks like I've got this protruding gut. And again, nothing I can do about it. But you know, I do feel like the fitter I am, the better I feel. Again, with my self-esteem and my own body confidence. But yeah, that was just an aside as well. Any other questions?
How do you overcome stiles and kissing gaits when you're out with your dog?
Oh God, yeah. Miles Without Styles is a good. There were some brilliant websites. To be honest, we do a lot of research before we go to new places. We look for. There's some of the websites out there that you can use. Things like pram-friendly websites. Again, it's a really good one. Anything that's pram friendly, anything that's again deemed wheelchair accessible. As soon as you hit a style though, it's like, yeah, don't turn back. Or occasionally in the past, I've been to places where I've been able to either get on the floor and shuffle around, and I don't recommend it. It's obviously you're getting on the floor, it's dirty, it's muddy. And most importantly, it's risk of damaging your skin. Nothing's ever worth risking damaging your skin. If you're able to then, you know, if you are, I went to one recently where it was all accessible. Then the very final gate, we're about 3 miles in, and it was about half a mile back to where we were going. It was just completely inaccessible. And where the pole was, the sort of the ground at the side of it just sort of really went away at a steep angle into a stream. And it was like, I stopped 2 guys coming past, like, right, you're going to stand at this side, you're going to hold the weight of it, and you're just going to leave me around. They didn't have a choice. It was like, oh, okay, this is what we'll do, is it? And they was able to get me around. Again, asking for help is never a bad thing. Most people are more than willing. Obviously, we got to adjust. Obviously, not everyone's going to be willing because they may have a disability or an issue themselves, but most people will help if they possibly can do. But yeah, styles and kissing gaits I can get around. A lot of the places I go, some of the kissing gaits have actually got a radar key access.
Yeah.
If you've not got a radar key, you can get them off the internet, or if you're with SIA Healthcare, you can get them free from SIA Healthcare. If you're not with SIA Healthcare, you should be with SIA Healthcare. It's a brilliant home delivery system.
As long as they send you the email on time and don't leave you at Christmas without anything.
Oh dear, yeah. That's, if they do, make sure you feed it back. Make sure you get back to them and say, oh, that's not good enough service, because it's all about them providing a gold standard service for everyone at all times. And if anything like that does happen, please do let them know so they can ensure that it doesn't happen again.
I was injured for 34 years ago, and the kissing gate style situation, I think, has got a lot worse over the years. Farmers seem to have become a bit precious about their fields, whereas it used to be if you were country wise, they didn't mind you going around the edge of a field, or they didn't mind you using their stubble fields and stuff. But now I'm finding it really, really difficult to find places to actually go off road and have fun with her.
I think a lot of it's dependent, obviously, the type of chair you use as well. I've got quite a small active user chair, which is quite nippy and narrow for getting in things. Some of the gates I go through, I can get through actually with my freewheel attached as well if I maneuver myself correctly. But the chance of an electric or powered chair getting through there, chance of a standard Action 3 type wheelchair getting through there, it's not going to happen. But the kind of thing generally depends on who owns the gate. If it's public footpath, it should be monitored, managed and maintained by the local council. And if it's, you can petition them to see if they can make it more accessible. Ultimately, if they're not allowing, or if they're not adapting for people with disabilities, they're going against the Equality Act and it is discriminatory, in which case, there may be something that we can do. And again, it might even be that your support coordinator from your region just writes a supporting letter or something from the SIA. Or I know it's something that SIA was campaigning on a while ago with, I think it was Miles Without Styles, to make the countryside more accessible.
I've got an extreme 4x4, so little gaps aren't friendly.
and things on the other side of it as well. Obviously, if you've got one of these, these off-road 6-wheel monster quad type things, they can only accommodate so much. Obviously, it's all about reasonable adjustments. Obviously, but it's case by case basis, I suppose. But absolutely. I think ultimately, unless you ask your council and say, look, I want to access the countryside and you're not allowing me to do that because of these mobility restrictions, ultimately they have to make some reasonable adjustments. I
think I'm going to chase them again. Thank you.
No problem. So we've had a question in the chat. How do we get into swimming again? My local pool has a hoist, but you can literally rock up and someone can assist you into the pool and provide you for station devices. I got into swimming purely by just going down to my local swimming pool and saying I want to try it. It was brilliant. I used to really enjoy swimming. I think one thing I found with swimming is it's an equalizer when you're in the water with somebody else and you're talking to someone on a face-to-face kind of situation. It just felt like I was, very close normal again. And I love being in the water. I must admit, I only go swimming now when I go on holiday. I wish I did it more because it was a phenomenal fitness. I remember the first time I went, I could swim a quarter of the pool at a time without having to stop because it was so physically exhausting. But then I got to the point of doing it for a couple of years. I'd do 50 lengths each time I was there. The faster I swam, I found that I had to wear goggles. I had to have goggles to put my face in the water because if I put my face in the water, it would raise my bum, which meant my legs didn't drag as much, which again was a nice little addition to making it easier for me. But to be honest, I think most community pools now have hoists. They have people trained to use the hoist. What I used to do is just be able to, because I could transfer onto the floor. I used to get there, got on the floor, drop into the pool, do my lens. But because I was so physically exhausted at the end of it, I wasn't able to then transfer back into my chair. So I would just then use the hoist to get myself back out. I would always throw an Inco sheet over my cushion to protect my cushion from getting wet with a towel over the back of it. And I was able to go back. The thing I really struggled with was not actually accessing the swimming, but the changing facilities were quite limited. They had a disabled cubicle, but they also had this little bench in there, and I was like, I'm supposed to transfer onto that bench to get dried and dressed. It was difficult. I did learn to dry and dress myself in my chair, but again, it's even to this day, it's not particularly an easy task, despite doing it for so long.
Yeah, Gary, can I just chip in a little bit there?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I swam an awful lot after my injury, and it's brilliant for your fitness. I've not swum for quite some time, but I am aware that many of the local authority pools have somebody that's trained to assist in the hoist to the pool. Most pools should have hoists. I just recommend ringing your local services and finding out what they've actually got in place. Because they might surprise you what they can actually do for you. So yeah, I just recommend getting in touch. Gary, also about hand cycling and the outdoors. there's a brilliant group called Experience Community, and they offer an awful lot of equipment to help get people into the outdoors. If you do have an opportunity to engage with Experience Community, I would definitely do that. When you talked about access to the countryside as well, they are very vocal on helping people to access countryside in their local areas. So that might be somebody worth catching, worth getting in touch with. To if you are having any difficulties in your local regions about accessing the countryside. I will put a link for Experience Community in here, so you can have a look at their website. But yeah, I think it's well worth having a look at them to see what they can offer you. Sorry to jump in there, Gary.
No, not at all. I've just put Experience Community.
I'll put their website in.
Yeah, I've just put my my Instagram as well. If anyone wants to see about sort of the type of things that I do. But no, jump in anytime you want, Andy. You've got more experience than I have around a lot of this stuff as well. So it's great to have your input. Yes, Martin.
Gary, can I just come back on that one there? I mean, I don't know whether there's anybody interested, but I'd been up until a couple of years ago, I'd never done any kayaking because every time I get in one, the balance is so poor. I'd be tipping over all the time. I wasn't enjoying doing the kayaking. I searched up and down the country, and I got the feeling that none of the kayaking clubs or canoe clubs were that interested in getting me along. I didn't feel welcomed really as such. Anyway, eventually I was persistent because I wanted to kayak up the length of Windermere. I got in touch. Somebody put me in touch with a local group in the area I'm in, Stoke-on-Trent, a group called Green Door, and they have kayaks without riggers on. And they'll get you in there. They've got all the transferring equipment, absolutely superb. I mean, I jumped in the kayak and straight I was away. It was so invigorating, and I found it absolutely superb to have the opportunity without the fear of I'm going to tip over every 2 seconds. And it really was excellent. And I would recommend it to anybody if they're interested in doing something like that. It's Green Door in Stoke-on-Trent. I think they've got 4 kayaks now without riggers on, and I don't think there are many of them around the country. So it's a good opportunity if anybody wanted to do that.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. I'm just looking for their. They seem to have a Facebook page, or I can't find a website. But I'll share their website for anyone who's in the region. Oh, not in the region, no. Obviously, if you're able to travel. Jonathan, you're waving frantically at me in the top right-hand corner of my screen. So,
hi, Jonathan Bailey. I've been a kayaker both before and after my spinal cord injury. I'm C3 incomplete, so I'm a bit tetraplegic. I found I can still kayak with a sit-on kayak, provided I've got someone else beside me. I agree exactly with your last contributor that your balance and your core has gone. But flat water now only, that's slow-moving rivers or lakes, or a flat, calm sea, it might be worth a try of that because they are wider, they're much more stable, much more maneuverable, and much lighter for my wife and I to manage. She's got one as well. Just a thought.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Jonathan. That's great. This is what these sessions are about, and these cafes are about. It's about people sharing their experience to hopefully encourage or motivate or empower someone to try something new. I'll be honest, I've not tried kayaking.
Forward Magazine have asked me to do an article for the summer, so watch this space and I'll see if I can get something together.
Excellent, brilliant, I like it. Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, John.
Yeah, there's also Calvert Trust in the Lake District, Keswick. I went on a taster weekend and we went kayaking, and they fastened 2 kayaks together with a plank across, so they're very stable. And so that's the Calvert Trust. And I think they work in conjunction with Backup outdoor activities. But Calvert Trust do all sorts of activities for not just disabled people, but people with learning difficulties. So it's a great activity, lovely facility, extremely clean, great food, reasonably priced, get well looked after. So it's a Calvert Trust. Lakes is the one I went on.
Fantastic. Yes, Backup do run their activity courses Calvert Trust. There's one in the Lake District, and there's also one down south somewhere as well. For more information, you can check out their website. Sorry, your name is not on there. You're just on as iPhone, but you're waving your fingers.
Joyce.
Oh, it's Joyce. Is you, Joyce?
Yes, hi, Gary.
Hey,
Yeah.
Joyce. Sorry.
Sorry, I do seem to describe myself as iPhone. Yeah. Yeah. Just a couple of things. Like, I represent the female reason for getting paralysed, like the equestrian world. Most blokes are motorbikes, aren't they? And women are horses.
I suppose in the trauma side of things, there is a high percentage of road traffic collision than I'd say equestrian related injuries. Yes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of women are equestrian related, aren't they? But it was carriage driving that got me out there. And as Adam, so bad, for the female, that is, I was adamant I wanted to ride. I didn't want to drive, but it's much better driving.
Well, I have to say, I think, when I became paralysed, there was a lot of focus around, again, you're going to be a Paralympian, do these things, and your average, your standard sports to go into, wheelchair basketball, track, sort of athletics, were the obvious ones, largely because there's lots of clubs, and those clubs have spare chairs, and it's a great way to get into it. But we're looking at kayaking, we look at carriage racing. Andy Wharton, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, he actually represented England in Australia for wheelchair rugby league, which again is not your standard wheelchair rugby, what most people think of when they think of sort of disability sports.
Yeah. I represented GB.
Oh, you did? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joyce, I was unaware. But my point is, I love the fact that even though that we often signposted to quite a standardized level of sport, wheelchair basketball probably being the main one, people will go off and experience so many different adaptive sports. With Deborah Cornwall, who was one of our volunteers, was a fencer for GB. And I just love the fact that there's so many different adaptive sports that no matter what your hobby, your interest, your activity wants to be, and what you want to you strive for, there will be an adaptive sport that you can get involved with. And it is about following your own passions. Sorry.
Yeah. On the equestrian side, it's just that you do people tend to count it out. You want to ride, and to be honest, I tried to ride and I just got pressure sores.
Right.
So
yeah, that's definitely.
I was like, I can't risk it. Yeah. Yeah.
No, we are.
One more thing.
Go on, Joyce.
Get a pair of binoculars. I'm in my Motability car at Southport, and the tide's really up. And I'm not joking. It's only dawned on me in the last year, I might not be able to climb up those hills or get right by the beach, by the water. But honestly, a pair of binoculars are great.
Well, just to give you an example, I mean, I've just moved my desk. I'm normally sat at my kitchen table. I've moved to my back room, and I'm sat right in front of my bird feeder, which is very distracting throughout the day. But I've currently got a blue tit, a great tit, a black bird, and a lot of goldfinch in my garden, which again is absolutely. But just to extend that example, there was a chap that I supported who sustained his spinal cord injury in whilst track racing, motorbike racing, and ended up as a complete injury. He's now, as much as he's still into his bike racing, he posts the most amazing and phenomenal photography photographs of the wildlife that he goes out in his chair and takes pictures of, and they're amazing. And the things that he's seeing, though, I'm seeing blue tits and goldfinches. He's seeing owls and falcons and voles and martins, house martins, all sorts of different things, because he's following his newfound passion.
And we would never have seen these things, would we, if we carried on in the old life?
No, that's very true.
Quite likely,
Now we are drawing to a close. We are 10 minutes over. I hope everyone's okay with that. Just before we do end this session, is there any questions that anyone would like to ask just before we end? Nothing. That's great. No problem. Oh, someone's being admitted into the room now. I don't know if they're rejoining or if they're just a little late. But I want to thank you all for coming and listening to me talk today. I hope it's been a good experience for everybody. I've really enjoyed it. Please do keep coming back to these cafes. They're a great resource for people. And additionally, we're going to be having community-based groups established across all regions that SIA support people over the coming months. So additional to having these national gatherings, you'll be able to go and meet people in person. As I discussed earlier, the benefits of seeing your fellow people living with disabilities in person out in the community is just, it's just brilliant. I can't recommend it enough. But it's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you all today. Thank you for listening. Please do like and share this when it gets posted onto YouTube. I believe it'll probably be on our social media pages as well. But yeah, have I missed anything, Rob? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that is everything. I think thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to you, Gary. It's the hour has absolutely flown by. Really enjoyed it, and thank you to so many people who turned up in your thousands, it seems, especially for a Zoom crowd. So yes, thank you very much. We will be back. It's normal service resumed on these cafes. They will be once every 2 weeks. So the next one will be the 19th of January. We've got Chris Edwards, someone from the Lewis Reed group, talking about disability and getting the most out of your vehicle. It's what the Lewis Reed group work and do. So yes, that is coming up in 2 weeks' time. Thank you everyone so much for joining, and I shall let you get on. Have a lovely day. We'll go on, Gary.
Just want to give one final plug. Please watch out for, on BBC Breakfast, the Martins Mountain documentary will be announced. It's going to be one day, either this week or Monday. I was actually very lucky to be filmed at Media City last week before Christmas, through my involvement with supporting Martin after the Manchester Arena bombing. But yeah, do watch out for that. It should be a really good, interesting documentary. And ultimately, it's about raising awareness of spinal cord injury, the great work that the SIA does. And obviously Martin's trying to raise £1 million for us, so to enable us to continue to run these cafes and to support people. But that's great. Just want to check, Paula, did you get Gareth's contact details? You don't have to come back on camera or anything, just if not, just get in touch and we'll get him, or if you can send me your details, I'll put my email in the chat if anyone does want to ask me any further questions. I'll make sure you get in touch with Gareth. Other than that, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Gary.
A real pleasure.
Thank you.